Hello, my name is Shane Young with Bold Zebras, and in this video we're going to work on configuring SharePoint 2016 on-prem. As you know, this is a video you've been waiting for, right? This is the 6th video in the series. The series started with a blank Hyper-V server, right? We created all the VMs, we joined them to domains, we installed SQL, we installed patches, we talked about how to manage Hyper-V a little bit. Then we installed SharePoint in the previous video and applied the June 2016 cumulative update, so that way SharePoint 16 is kind of up to the latest and greatest. So in this video we're going to jump in and we're going to start with creating the users we need and then creating our actual SharePoint farm. Now I'll be following along in our premium guide here. That'll give me all the step-by-step and all of the pieces. And with the premium guide, right, you get a piece of paper and or 26 pages of fun SharePoint goodness, all the step-by-steps, the clicks, all the screenshots you need, steps bolded, that type of stuff. You also get some PowerShell scripts that download to stop from all the typing that we're going to have to do along the way. But don't worry, everything that you need to know will be covered in this video and doesn't require the fancy premium PDF. Alright, well, let's just jump right in. So we're going to start by going over to our domain controller. We're going to log into that as a domain administrator using our favorite password ever. And what we're going to do once this opens up is we need to go in and create 5 different user accounts. These will be the service accounts that we're going to use in order to manage our SharePoint farm. So we'll go up here, just do it differently today. We'll click on Tools and then Active Directory Users and Computers. And now that that's open, we'll make sure we're in the Users OU. And we're going to click on this little symbol for creating a new user. The first name is going to be SharePoint. And the last name will be farm. And then we're going to do sp_farm. And we're going to type in, actually I'm going to cheat. Watch this, we're going to do this. We're going to go to Notepad. We're going to type in password 1. And we're going to copy that to the clipboard. So highlight it, Control C. And so now as we work through creating these 5 users, we can just cut and paste. We're going to then set them all to user cannot change password and password never expires. Next and finish. Alright, so we're going to repeat that step now for the web apps account. Now, just to keep in mind, right, if you use the premium scripts, then you'll actually just get a PowerShell script. You double click it, and 5 seconds later all these users have been created and you don't have to mess with this. But we're going to show you how to do it manually so that those of you that don't want to buy the premium, there you go. Next and finish. Alright, so we got farm, web apps. Next one we're going to create is service apps. So SharePoint, try and spell SharePoint correctly. If you watched the previous video, you know that typos drive me nuts. So this be service apps. And if for whatever reason you decide to use different names, which is fine, just keep in mind that my scripts and the things that we're going to talk about and all the processes using these specific usernames. So just be sure to kind of map those out in your head as to what you've decided to use each one of these for. Alright, so this is the profile account. This is one we'll use to import from Active Directory later. Really appreciating my cutting and pasting or copying and pasting of the password. It's a lot to type. Alright, and the last one here is our content account. And so this is one we'll use later to tell SharePoint to use when it's crawling content. Alright, so just like that, we've now got all these user accounts created. If you're wondering why there's already a SharePoint install account, remember that's the one we created in 2 videos ago when we actually did the install portion of SharePoint. So that's why that account's already there. Alright, so that gets us through our Active Directory work for the moment. So now I want to switch over to SQL Server. We got to do a couple changes there as well. So hit Control-Alt-Delete. We're going to log in as the domain administrator on this machine also. You could probably argue there's better practices for how your SQL Server should be authenticated with, but I'm not here to teach too much about SQL, just the bare necessities for SharePoint, so we're not going to worry about that type of stuff. Alright, and so now that this is open, we're going to go to Start, and we'll type in SQL, and we're going to open the SQL Server Management Studio. Remember, depending on your path, right, that back in video 3 you could do 3A or 3B. So 3A you installed SQL 2014, 3B you installed SQL 2016. It doesn't matter, these steps are pretty much 100% exactly the same regardless of which version you chose. So no big deal if you're like, wait a minute, I've got SQL 2016. It'd be the same type of process. Alright, brief pause there while that opens. So we're going to now connect to our SQL Server. And now that our SQL Server is connected, we're going to drill into security and then logins. And then we're going to right click on logins and we're going to say new login. Alright, when this screen pops up, we're going to do Shane's Cows or whatever your domain might be, and then SP install. So what we have to do here is we have to give the install account a couple of database or SQL Server roles in order for it to function correctly so they can create the farm. Then SharePoint will do most of the heavy lifting for us on its own, but we want to kind of get these pieces done so that we can do the install. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to server roles, and we need to give this account the DB creator role and the security admin, and then leave public checked. I can tell you, like I've said, I've done hundreds of these installs in production environments over the years, and I've seen people where they go in and they hack away public. They either take and neuter the access level of that, changing the system defaults and things like that. Causes a lot of problems for SharePoint. So in your environment, make sure you got DB creator, security admin, and public, and their the out-of-the-box settings for optimal chances of SharePoint working. All right, so we'll click OK. Okay, so that gives our SP install account all the permissions that it needs. And so then the next thing we need to do is we're going to go up here to the SQL Server itself, and we're going to right click on it and do properties. And one of the settings inside SQL Server on the advanced screen here, or page, down at the bottom, is called max degrees of parallelism. How many processors can be used to execute SQL statements? And the default is 0, which means let SQL Server figure it out, kind of do its own magic math. That does not work for SharePoint. It is unsupported. So what you need to do is you're going to need to change this to the number 1 and then click OK. Good news is that setting takes effect right away. We don't have to reboot, restart, or anything like that. But now we've set up SQL Server so that all the tasks just run on one processor. Makes for a much happier SharePoint. If you don't make that change, when you go to create the farm, SharePoint will actually yell at you and error out. Good news, it usually errors out in a way that tells you that that was your issue. All right, so then the last thing we need to do is we're going to hit the start, and we're going to type in firewall. And once this opens up, what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we need to create an inbound rule. So remember way back when we did the SQL install back in 3A and 3B, we said that one of the warnings was we had the firewall enabled, which we knew. We said that was good, but so now we need to punch a hole through so that our SharePoint server can actually talk to the SQL Server. So over here on the right, I'm going to click on New Rule, and I'm going to do Port. I'm going to say Next, and I'm going to say Specify the local port 1433. Next. We're going to allow that connection. Next. From anywhere and everywhere. That's good. Next. And then we will call this SQL Server port. And 1433, just so we're all on the same page. And hit Finish. And now we have a rule open for that. So that's going to let SharePoint talk to SQL Server. All right, check my guide. Moving right along. Good deal. All right, we'll close the firewall tool out. And now we're ready to jump over to our SharePoint server. All right, so we got our AD changes done, our SQL Server changes done. So now we're going to log into our SharePoint server. We want to make sure we're logging in as the SP install account. So, if you've been kind of moving back and forth through the videos or made any of your own changes, make sure you're using that same install account. So I'm going to put in my super secret password. And also you can see we've got some Windows updates that would like to be applied. I mentioned it before, right? We did all of the updates that were available when we very first built the VMs. And because this has taken me, several days, weeks, whatever, to work through all these, new updates have been released. And so Windows would like me to continue to patch it. Because it's a 180-day trial, I haven't messed with it, right? If we close Server Manager, we can see I got 158 days. So for a 158-day demo environment, we're not going to worry about putting any more patches on. Okay, all right. So we're here at the desktop. We're logged in as SP install. And so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to start working on creating the farm. All right, creating the farm. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the start button. And then we're going to start typing in power. And then over here on the right, we're going to look for the SharePoint 2016 management shell. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click on that. And what we're going to do is we're going to say I want to run that as administrator. A little pop-up, we're going to say yes. Okay, now that it's loaded, you'll see there is an error message. The local farm is not accessible. Commandlets for the feature dependency ID are not registered. That's normal, right? There's not a farm. So don't worry about it. If you got that error message, you're in good shape. Make sure you have the administrator out here in front of the name. That tells you did run as administrator because it won't work without it. We're also going to right click real quick, do properties. We're going to make a couple of changes. One is I always enable quick edit mode. Makes cutting and pasting commandlets a lot easier. We'll do that. And then font, for whatever reason, I always like 10 by 18. It's just a little bit bigger. So we'll say OK. And just like that, we're ready to go. All right, so the first step we're going to do is we need to create a new configuration database. So we're going to do new SP configuration database. And I'm using tab complete, right? So -D and hit tab, so there's database name. And so SharePoint _config and then -D. Again, this time it says, hey, database server is what you need. That's right. So I named my SQL Server SQL Demo. If you named yours something different, make sure you fill in the right thing. And so then now we want to do a -A for administration content database and do SharePoint admin, I like capitals, admin content DB. And then actually before we do that, and so one of the things, the whole reason we're doing this via PowerShell instead of just using the config wizard is for that database name right there, SharePoint _admin _content DB. If you just use the config wizard, what would have happened is it wouldn't have prompted you for that database name, and so then it would have created that same name structure and then put, that 32-digit GUID at the end of it. And I can tell you, your SQL DBAs, they're not big fans of GUID. So stay away from that. That's why we're going to use this simple little script. It's going to avoid that hassle, and then we'll switch back over to running the actual config wizard to do the other steps that there are no added benefits to doing via PowerShell. All right. So here we're going to do -local server role, and we're going to do single server farm. Okay, so what that is that's kind of like the old basic install, right? That's going to set the min role for this server. It says, hey, everything's going to run on this box, and this is going to be the only server in the farm, so you can't add other servers, you can't connect to it, but all the things will be automatically provisioned on this box as necessary. If that's the case, it works great for this demo environment of what we're doing here. If you're building out production and you're going to have multiple servers, clearly single server farm is not what you want to do. You'll want to look into min role, MINROLE. And so with min role, there's actually 4 of those, right? There's a web front end, an application, a search, and a distributed cache. And so to actually build a proper production farm using the min role config, you would need 4 servers, one of each one of those. And then really, if you want redundancy, you're going to need 8 servers, right? Because you need 2 web front ends, 2 search servers, 2 application servers, and 2 distributed cache servers to have some high availability in your farm. We're not going to worry about building a multi-server farm today, but that is something to keep in mind if you are using this script to start building out production. Is you probably don't want single server farm. You're probably going to want to pick one of the options. Oh, the 5th option I didn't cover is custom. And so with custom, that means, hey, you're going to take care of putting things on all the different servers as necessary. And so, you might want to look at using that one as well. The good news is that after the fact, you can change the min role. So if we provision this as single server farm, and in a month we realize we want to make this a multi-server farm, you can go in through both Central Admin or PowerShell and change the server farm, or change this server and assign a min role. Or if all of this just weirds you out and you're like, hey, I don't want to do that, then you can also use -server role optional, and that just means, you know what, I don't want to think about min role, I don't want to mess with it. Not recommending you do that, but it is possible if that's your story. Okay, So that's all the settings we need. So we're going to hit enter. And now what this is prompting us for, this is a common mistake I've seen in students over the years, is this wants to know what account do you want to use for the farm. So we're going to do Shane's cows and then sp_farm. And then the password is going to be pass@word1, right? This is not prompting you for your account. It's not prompting you for the domain administrator. It's not prompting you for the install. This wants to know what the farm account is. So make sure you get this one right. Because if you don't, unwinding the wrong farm account, it's probably not worth the effort. You're probably going to nuke and pave. So if we use the snapshots that we talked about way back in, what was that, video 2, video 3 where we did snapshots? Video 2 where we did snapshots. All right. So we're going to click OK. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to ask us what is the passphrase. And so I'm going to set a passphrase. When it comes to passphrase, keep in mind, right, cheating, I'm using my little guide here, that your passphrase must contain at least 8 characters and at least 3 of the following 4 character groups: uppercase characters, lowercase characters, numbers, and non-alphabetic, you know, the @ symbols, the pounds, that type of thing. So that's where our good friend pass@word1 meets 3 of the 4 of those requirements, so it's a good one. So we'll hit enter. All right, so now it's going to go and it's going to provision those databases and start the beginning of our farm. And while it does, I'm going to hit pause. All right, so that took a solid 10 minutes, but good news is everything was created, right? If we switch to the SQL Server for a second, we can expand out databases. There's our databases. Yay, moving along. All right, so we'll switch back to SharePoint. So now what we're going to do is we hit start again, and we're going to type in config, and we're going to run the SharePoint 2016 products configuration wizard. Yes, that little scary pop-up. All right, welcome to SharePoint products. Next. Hey, it's going to turn off IIS and stuff. That's good because no one's using the server yet anyway. Do I want to disconnect? No. So it knows it's already part of that farm, right? It knows about the PowerShell that's happened. So next. And so here it's like, hey, I got to put central admin somewhere. I always put it on port 5555. I don't really have a reason. I made it up, oh goodness, 10 or 12 years ago, and I've just stuck with it ever since. I know my other buddy uses his anniversary, so that way he always remembers. Just make sure it's a number above 1024, right? Because 1024 is kind of the commonly used port. So, you know, anywhere from 1025 all the way to 65, 535, those are valid range. And you might want to make sure there's no other conflicts in your environment. I've had good luck with 5555. Whatever works for you. So next. All right, and so then it says, hey, let's complete this. So we'll say next. And you'll notice here it jumps straight to step 4 of 9. That's because we did steps 1, 2, and 3 via the PowerShell earlier. We could have done all of these steps, so we could have avoided this altogether, right? There's more commandlet options we could have specified, and then you run some other little commandlets to do. The thing is, I try to only type in when it's absolutely necessary, because we're not cutting and pasting these scripts, we're actually having to type. So typing in the bare necessities what I showed you earlier, then you run the config wizard. It gets you the same output as if you just typed in a whole bunch more PowerShell. You know, I don't want carpal tunnel. You don't either. All right, we'll hit pause and we'll be back in a second. All right, so that took about 4 minutes. You can see we got configuration successful. Yay us. So we'll hit finish. And this is going to cause central admin to open up. Okay, and after a minute or so, it comes up, you know, hey, help make SharePoint better. I always do yes. Say OK. Now SharePoint's going to ask, do you want to run the SharePoint farm configuration wizard? Heck no, right? If you run this wizard, yes, it provisions all the service apps, get you kind of started, but once again, you go back to really nasty database names, and that's what we're trying to avoid here. We want clean environment, so we'll say no, we're going to do that on our own, so we'll hit cancel, and then central admin is going to dump us back to the home page. While it's in the process of that, actually step 1 for us is going to be we'll have to provision 2 service apps by a PowerShell. There is no GUI to do them. Right, so if we go over here, back to central admin, we say manage service applications right here. We'll see that these are the 2 service apps that we have right now. And if the next one it creates a state service, there is no state service in this list. So over in PowerShell, we'll type in CLS to clear the screen off for us. Yay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a new ASP state service application and -name, and then we'll put it in quotes, state service application, and then we'll hit enter. All right, that's good. Now we're going to say get SP state service application, and we're going to pipe that over to new SP state service application, right? We're using tab complete again, application proxy, so I had to hit tab twice there. And then we're going to put dash, oh, where's my dash? I lost it. Default proxy group. We'll hit enter. So that's creating this, or that's taking the service application we just created, and we're creating a proxy for that. So that worked, yay. So then now we'll do get SP state service application again, and now we're going to pipe that over to new SP state, oh, not application, database. And then we're going to do name state underscore service underscore DB, close those quotes, and then database server is our SQL demo. If you named yours anything different, make sure you fill in the blank there. We'll hit enter. So that's going to create the service applications database. And then finally, last one for this one, we're going to do get SP database. Oh, this is an ugly one. We're going to pipe that over to where-object, and then we're going to use these funky little brackets. We're going to do $__type EQ, which means equal in PowerShell. EQ quotes Microsoft .office .server .administration .state database. Whew, I buried that in there. Database, close quotes, close curly brackets, and then we're going to say initialize SP state service database and hit enter. Boom, just like that, we now have a state service. If we switch back over to Central Admin and hit refresh, there's our state service application. All right, we'll switch back over to PowerShell. And now, like I said, this is a lot of PowerShell to type in. I get that. So as part of the premium package, you just run a script called create state. You answer a question, and it does all this for you. But it's not what we're here to demonstrate, so we'll just keep powering through. So I'm going to type in CLS again to clear the screen. Yay. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the usage and health data collection service application. It's also not in the drop-down list. So we're going to do new SP usage application dash name, space, and then we'll do usage and health data collection, like so. Okay, now that that's finished, we're going to create a variable called proxy. So we're going to say $proxy equals get SP service application. Oh, I should have typed in more. Service application proxy. And then we're going to say where. These where clauses are always the worst typing. Where, and then I got our curly brace again, and we're going to do $_ dot type name dash EQ, right, for equals usage and health data collection proxy. Close the quotes, close the curly brace, hit enter. Boom. And then we're going to say $proxy dot provision. Boom, boom, hit enter. And boom, just like that, if we switch over to Central Admin and do refresh, we've now got usage and health data collection also. If all this PowerShell is scaring you, right, good news is you can just type it all in. You know, just what you see. You can hit pause, type. I do plan on doing a video later on kind of explaining, not this PowerShell, but teaching you PowerShell in general, right? What are variables? How do you get help? What are these curly bracket things we keep seeing, this $_ underscore and all that type of stuff. So at some point, or hopefully just magically be a link right now to the PowerShell video that I've made, or will make, but I haven't done yet. So anyway, something to look forward to, right? Yay. Okay, so good news is we're done here for a moment. So we'll switch back to Central Admin. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a managed account. And so to do that, we're going to go into Central Admin, or back to the home of Central Admin, right? We'll click on Security. And then here we're going to say Configure Managed Accounts. Okay, and so you can see that SharePoint went ahead and registered SP Farm for us. And so now we need to register a couple ourselves. And the reason we're going to do them now, so that way when we reference them later, we don't have to kind of break our train of thought. So we're going to say Register Managed Account. And if you're not familiar with managed accounts, right, the idea is we're going to go in, we're going to register this account with SharePoint, and give it a username and password. And so then now SharePoint is always going to just point to this registration when we reference that service account. So if we ever have to change the password or edit those accounts, we do that here, and then anywhere we're using that inside of SharePoint references it. Also, you can enable things like having SharePoint automatically change the password for you, right? If you have to meet those password policies where you need it to be rolling, you don't want anyone to know the password, we can kind of accomplish all that thanks to Register Managed Account. All right, so the first account we're going to register is going to be Shane's Cows SP Service Apps, and then pass at word 1. Scroll down here, and we're just going to say OK, right? Because we're not going to mess with any of the password changing stuff. We're going to tell IE we do not need it to save our password. Thanks anyway. And now we're going to register another managed account. And to do that will be Shane's Cows SP Web Apps, and pass at word 1. And OK. We do not want to register, or remember that one. So that's good. So now we can see things like, if there was a password change schedule, when's the last password change, all of that stuff. And this is really going to avoid us having to worry about passwords as we go through the rest of our work. All right, so now we're going to go back over to Application Management, and we're going to click on Create Service or Manage Service Applications again. And now we're going to hit the drop down. And so now you see a lot of different service applications here. Now we're not going to do all of them. The reason is because I think things like Access Services is kind of its own project, and it's not something we just do in a farm by default. We only do it if we're going to use it for something, or word automation, or Visio, or any of that type of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're just going to provision the standard service apps that I put in a farm if I'm building one to kind of get started, and then we'll worry about those other ones in later videos if we ever decide to tackle the subject of like how to get Access Services working or something. Okay, so the first one that I consider standard is the Business Data Connectivity Services. So we're going to click on that. And so now for service application name, we're going to do Business Data Connectivity Service App. Whatever. You can name these things whatever you want. Yeah, we want to do app. Let's do service. Business Data Connectivity Service. Okay, database server. That's where we're going to use our default. Database name. Oh, look at those guys. They're trying to get a GUID on there. All that work you guys have been doing to keep GUIDs away, and they just shove one in here for free. So we're going to highlight that and delete it. So the database name is now just BDC_service_DB. Much nicer. We're going to roll down the page. And here we need to, because this is our first service app, we want to create a new service app pool for this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to call this default service app pool. And the name, I want you guys to pay attention to what you name this one, because later on we're going to use PowerShell, another PowerShell script. We got to make sure we get this exactly right. So if you have any weird typos here, you mess this one up, might be worth redoing. Default service app pool is what I'm assuming that you're using, going forward. So just kind of keep that in mind with all your scripting and everything. All right. And then from the drop down here, it says which service account do you want to use? Look, the accounts we registered earlier. So we want to do SP service apps, right? So we're going to create this service app pool, and it's going to run as service apps, and then all of our service applications are actually going to run using this account going forward. Okay? Or going to run in this pool, I should say, going forward. So say OK. All right, thanks to pause, that magically created really fast. And you can say, hey, it's all done. Great, we'll click OK. So now it shows up here, that's good. If we go over to the SQL Server again just for a second, right, databases, and hit refresh, we're going to see, there's our BDC database, there's our state service database, our logging database, right? So we're chugging along and creating SQL databases and all these pretty nice clean names. Like it. All right. Also, before we continue on, I want to talk about something else in the whole min role story. And so it used to be in 2010 or 2013, after you'd start the business data connectivity service, or after you create the service application, you need to go start the service on server in one of the servers in your farm. That's one of the beauties of min role. So min role, because this server is a single server farm, it just automatically is enabling that for us, right? If we go to application management, no autocomplete, and then we go to manage services on server, we'll see that there is a business data connectivity service right here, and it's already been started, right? SharePoint did that for us because it's part of the single server farm role. If you guys are doing anything with min roles, so whether you did you did the whole optional thing, or you did custom, you're going to need to make sure that you've got your services up and running, or none of your service apps are going to work. So just one of those little mental spots. If you're following the steps the way I've been doing them, nothing to do here. But if you're using min role and you've used custom or ignore the role, then you're going to need to manually start this stuff. Okay? Okay, let's go back to application management and manage our service apps. The next service application we need to create is the manage metadata service. So we're going to hit new and manage metadata service. And for name, we're going to do managed metadata service. Database name, we're going to do managed underscore metadata underscore service underscore DB. Now, keep in mind, I'm doing the database names with underscores in them, right? You can also will learn very quickly that your database administrators are not fans of spaces or dashes. It can cause some erroring out in their scripts if they didn't escape those characters correctly. So we always use underscores in our database names, and those are very safe, very DBA friendly characters. All right, scroll down a little bit. And so now this time, we're not going to create a separate app pool for each service app. That is bad juju, right? That will run you out of resources way too fast. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to say use existing app pool, and we're just going to choose our default service app pool. So the reason I name it default is so it shows up at the top of my list every time above these two. Tricky, right? So default service app pool, we're good, yay. We don't have a content type hub or anything right now, so we're going to ignore all that, and we'll click OK. All right, and so I used the pause button to save us. I will point out when I clicked OK, literally nothing happens when you click OK until all of a sudden it brings you back to the screen. You won't see a processing screen. It won't even look like you pressed the button OK. Just have faith in yourself. You pressed OK and wait a minute to 2 minutes, and then you should just be dropped right back in the screen, and you know, hey, good stuff, right? Manage metadata is done. If we refreshed over there on SQL Server, we'd see the new database, but we won't bother. Okay. So next up in our list of required ones is actually going to be our friend, the search service application. So search is another one of those ones where when you create it, if you use the tool here, you're going to get a lot of nasty database names, like 5 databases worth. That's how bad it is. So this is another one we like to use PowerShell. Now this PowerShell though, I'm going to give you a little trick on this one. All right, so if we go to my C drive, and we go to install, so I have a search PowerShell notepad document here. And so if you go out here to my good buddy Todd's blog, so there's the URL, www.toddclint.com/createsearch2013. You can download this script. The reason for that is this is just way too much stuff to type, right? There's no chance that you or I are going to type that in on the first try without a lot of errors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy all this, right click and copy, and right click over here and paste, and so it's going to start processing. Good news is if you're using the premium package, I've given you a script for this where you just run the PS1, you answer some questions, and it'll do it all for you. If you go and get Todd's script, just make sure that you get the service accounts. You check all the database names and all of the service app pools and all that stuff, and just make sure that all your settings are the same as what we've done here, so you don't get yourself in any trouble. Okay, so this is another one of the ones that's going to take several minutes, so we're going to hit pause. I'll see you in a second. All right, thanks to the magic of pause, that is done also. Yay! We switch over to the database server real quick here. I just want to show you guys all these databases that get created, all these different search ones. And so imagine if they all had the 32 characters. They'd be out here somewhere. You'd just run out of screen real estate. It'd be very sad. All right, so now we want to jump over to the SharePoint server again. And next up, I'm just going to switch to central admin. and we're going to hit refresh to see our beautiful search server. And I'm going to click on the search service application because we need to make one minor change to it real quick. And so that minor change is you can see that by the default content access account is currently set to SP farm. Boo, hiss. We don't want that. Account has too many access, too many permissions. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to set this to be, I'm going to change SP farm to be SP content. Remember that account we created earlier? It's just for this purpose. So that way, anytime that we need to give search access to something so that we can crawl or index it, we'll just give permissions to that one account and not have to worry about giving our whole farm access. So we'll click OK. So that gets that updated. Be a little more relevant as we kind of work our way down the pipe some, but I just wanted to get that out of the way real quick. All right, so back to Central Admin, it's homepage. And then we're going to manage service applications again, right? You should get real used to where this page is. We do this a lot. We're going to hit new. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to create the secure store service application. So we're going to click on new secure store and we're going to name it secure store service. Database server, SQL demo. Oh, look at them guys trying to get 32 characters out of us again. It's like somebody gets evaluated by how many characters the database names are. Well, it should be short. So there you go. So we'll get rid of that GUID off the end. We'll scroll down here. We want to use our existing app pool, the default service app pool, one last time. Or not one last time, but again. So that looks good. So we'll click OK. And just like that, it's done thanks to pause. So we'll click OK. And we actually want to make one change for this service application also. So we're going to click on Secure Store Service. And so you notice here we get a warning. Before you can do anything, you got to generate a key. Well, that's what we're here to do. So hit Generate New Key. OK. And now it says, what is your passphrase? One of the things that drives me crazy about SharePoint, there's a lot, right? But notice here it's pass space phrase. And earlier it was passphrase all one word. What's the difference between passphrase is one word and pass space phrase? The space. I don't know why they do it. It's just to make me bonkers. Either way, you need to give a passphrase here. So we're going to do pass at word one. Nope. Pass at word one. And click OK. Now this passphrase, just so you know, right, this is what it's using to encrypt the database. And so if you ever need to restore this database, like you're either upgrading to 20, whatever the next version of SharePoint might be down the road, or you're restoring from a catastrophic failure, after you load this database up, the first thing you have to do is come in and put the key in. So if you need to make sure you capture this key and you know it so that you have it for down the road. All right? Okay. So let's go back over to our good friend, Manage Service Applications. Okay, and so before we create the user profile service app, there's a lot of little steps that we need to do to make this go smoothly. And the first one's actually going to require us switching back over to our Active Directory server, way over here. Oh, we'll close out of that window. Server Manager, I didn't mean to click on it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit the Start button, and we're going to type in DNS. And you want the DNS with the little globe, not the DNS with the program look. So click on the DNS with the globe. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up DNS entries for our two web applications we're going to create, my.shanescows.com and portal.shanescows.com. So to do that, we're going to double click on DC Demo, double click on Forward Lookup Zone, double click on Shane's Cows. And so now that we're in here, we can hit Action, and we're going to do a new CNAME record. Now, if I was building production, I usually do host records. Right, so I would use the one above it. Same process. The difference is CNAME is I can just reference my.shanescows.com to the SharePoint server, and it'll kind of keep up with that if any of the IP addresses change or that type of thing. Production, you don't have to worry about IP addresses changing, and if you're going to use anything like Kerberos or anything like that, you need to be using an A record. But for these environments, I use CNAMEs. All right, so alias name is my. Fully qualified domain name. We'll browse in here, double click on our DC server, double click forward, double click here on Shane's Cows, and then scroll down, and then there is SharePoint demo. Let's double click. So there's our settings, good stuff. Click OK. And then now we're going to do Action and new CNAME again. This time we're going to call it Portal, and browse into the same exact spot and use SharePoint demo again. Easy enough, right? Remember, if you use something different for your domain, you know, you used Bob's Cows or Pete's Chickens, whatever you might have used, those your name would show there, not Shane's Cows. So we'll click OK. Okay, so that gets our DNS entries made. So we can close out of DNS Manager. All right, now the next thing we need to do is we're going to go back over here to Active Directory users and computers, and we're going to look at our friend, the SharePoint profile account, right? He needs some special permissions in order to import from Active Directory. And so the first thing that we're going to do with that is we're going to go into the domain up here. So we're going to right click on this, and we're going to say delegate control. This is scary stuff. And to do all these changes, you do need I think to make these changes, you can be a domain admin, but to make the next set of changes, you need to be an enterprise admin. So the admin account we've been using here is both of those, but if you're in your domain and you have a lesser privileged account, you might not be able to make these changes. All right, so we hit next, select a user. For the user object, we're going to type in SP profile, and we're going to say OK. So there's our account, good. So next, we want to create a custom task to delegate. So next. And this folder and existing objects in this folder, yep, so next. And so then here what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down one, and we want to do replicating directory changes. And so we'll just check that box and say next, and finish. All right, so that's one change. The second change is we need to go into this built-in group, or OU, and there is a group called the pre-Windows 2000, let's see if I can expand this, compatibility access. We'll double click on that, and we'll do members, add, and SP profile. Now this is actually one of those changes that's only required if you have an old domain with old versions of Active Directory domain controllers and things like that. I didn't want to cover all the different scenarios that that would relate to directly, so what I've always done to make this work as easy as possible, because the profile import can be one of the most challenging parts of SharePoint, is I just always make this change. It just, that way I don't have to even sweat it or think anything. Don't have to count on the Active Directory guys telling me the truth. I just tell them this change is required and life is grand. All right, so we'll say OK. Okay, so those two changes are made. Those weren't too bad. We'll close Active Directory users and computers now. And the last change, and we'll get rid of our password. Probably not a good idea to have your password right there. Okay, and the last change is really scary. So we're going to hit the start button, and we're going to type in ADSI. This is going to open up a tool called ADSI Edit. Now this demo environment, not a huge deal. If you mess it all up, right, we got snapshots. But ADSI Edit's like regedit for your domain. You can destroy your Active Directory to a point that no one will ever fix it with ADSI Edit. Pretty easy. So don't get cute in here. Don't press any buttons. Do exactly what you're saying, then close it fast. All right. So we're going to double click on ADSI Edit, and then we're going to right click and say Connect to. We're going to hit this drop down, and we need to do the configuration. So well-known naming context configuration. Click OK. We're going to double click on this folder, and then double click on this folder. And then now we're going to right click on this folder, and we're going to say new, or we're going to say properties, not new, we're going to do properties. We're going to click on security. We're going to add, we're going to add our SP profile user. And we're going to scroll down a little bit here, and there's good old replicating directory changes. Give that a check, hit apply, OK, and close ADSI Edit. We're done. Whew. Right, all the changes that we made, just so you have a point of reference to whenever it kind of challenges on them, they are just allowing the profile account to read Active Directory. So reading the Active Directory's change log, so that way it's not always having to do a full import. It can do incremental imports and things like that because it knows what's happening with AD. Nothing here will let people do bad things to your domain. It can't make any edits. So, you know, if the AD guys are kind of getting on you, just tell them to take a chill pill. It'll all be fine. Those are all very simple, very valid changes. All right? Cool. Okay, so that's done. So now we need to switch back over to our SharePoint VM. Still not ready to create the My Site profile service application yet, though, because a couple more things we got to do. So we're going to go to Application Management. And here I want to manage web applications, wherever I hit those. Right there. Manage web apps. And so we're going to do new. Okay, and after a few seconds that'll load. And so now that we're in here, we want to do, on port 80, we're going to set a host header of my.shanescows.com, right? You'd put whatever your URL would be there. So boom, that's good. We're going to scroll down. We're not going to mess with any of the security changes. Nope, all that's good. And so what we're going to do now is we want to create a new application pool. And once again, I'm going to change the name here because I'm going to reuse this one for all of us. I'm going to do default SharePoint content pool. And in the drop down, we're going to choose a registered account, and there's our buddy SP Web Apps. So now we have two app pools, one for the service apps and one for the web apps, each with a different account, keeping security divided, nice and easy to use. Database server's good. Database name, I'm going to put WSS_content_my. I always like to tie the database name back to the host header of the site, so that way I know, it's easier to kind of match one for one from troubleshooting, or the DBA is like, what is this database? It's a lot easier for me to remember what they are instead of having random names, or the SharePoint way, random GUIDs. So we'll scroll down. It's all good. So we'll say OK, and then we'll hit pause. Okay, so now that's done. We'll say OK, and there's that one. And so we're going to repeat the same exact steps, except this time we're going to create a portal web application. So that way we've got my.shanescals.com to host all the my sites, and then portal.shanescals.com to kind of create any of the content, the team sites, the search centers, that type of stuff that you'll want to play with. So that's why we'll go ahead and set up both of those. All right, so what we'll do here is we'll change the port, right? They went to a weird port. We're going to do 80 again. We're going to do a host header. So this time portal.shanescals.com. We'll scroll down past all this stuff. Now we're going to say use existing app pool. And here we want to use our default SharePoint content pool. I can tell you from the past, students sometimes are confused because the farm account still shows up here, but if I try and click, nothing happens, right? Because this is what would have been the default if I did create new, but it's not using any of these settings, so just ignore that. And then for the database name, now we're just going to do WSS_content_portal. Scroll to the very bottom, click OK, and we'll hit pause again. Okay, and just like that, that service application's also done. Or service application, web application's also done. You know what I meant. All right, so now if we go over here to application management, what we need to do is we need to create a couple of site collections so that there's something to access, right? Our web applications themselves are just containers. Until you create a site collection and sites and contents in there, there's really nothing to access. So to do that, we're going to click on Create Site Collections. Okay, and then when we get here, we're going to see My Shane's Cal, so that's the web app. We're going to create the My Site Host site collection. Scroll down here. Under Template, we need to choose Enterprise, and then we need to choose the My Site Host. For the primary site collection administrator, for this environment, I'm just using SP install because that's who I'm always logged in as. That way I can get in and do what I got to do. I will tell you for production, you should always have both a primary and a secondary. Just in case something happened to this account. I've seen issues before where you try and restore and one of the accounts isn't there anymore. It can cause a lot of wonkiness, so it's always just better to have two different accounts here. And you can't use groups. People always ask. It's not possible. And then a quota. So we'll click OK real quick to get this started. When it comes to quotas, right, my best advice to you, even though I didn't just follow it, is if you ever have to say, okay, what site collections in the world need a quota? The answer is all of them. Every single site collection you ever create should have a quota. Why? Because that keeps you from having problems, right? So you're like, I don't want to have a quota for my primary site collection. We're just going to store files there. I don't want to stymie the users. I didn't say it had to be a small quota. Make it a quota though, right? Maybe it's 200 gigs. Maybe that's the size you want that site collection to be. But what that does, that stops if somebody starts, dumping all their YouTube videos out there, all those funny cat videos, take up all your space, and they try and store a gig out there, or not a gig, sorry, a terabyte, right? The quota stop you from getting in trouble. So every single site collection should have a quota. When you're creating ones for your users and departments and things like that, they should be reasonable numbers. Is it 100 megs? Is it a gig? Is it 10 gigs? Whatever it might be. Set a reasonable number and then have a methodology. This is the process. If a user gets their 10 gig quota, this is the process for how we increase that quota. Write it down and publish it. Right? Because the other thing we don't want to have happen when you have quotas is have a scenario where, the people that you like, right, the nice people who brought you brownies, they get their quota extended. And the people that annoy you because, they're, I don't know, Pittsburgh Steelers fans or something disgusting like that, that they don't get quotas increased. We just want to have a nice step-by-step rules. And if you're a Steelers fan, I apologize, but yeah, you're used to it. All right. Anyway, so you can see that site collection is created. So we'll click OK. And then what we want to do is we want to also create one for Portal. I'd also like to point out the typo here. Create site collections. Through this link, I can only create one site collection. There should be no S there. Whatever. All right. So now we want to create another site collection, but not on the My Web App. We want to create it on the Portal Web App. So I'm going to hit the drop down, change Web App, and then it's going to show me my available web apps. It's going to give me this cute Internet Explorer pop-up, go away. So we'll do Portal. All right, so there's Portal, and so we'll just call this, my port, or no, let's not use the word my though. Portal, whatever. Name it whatever you want. So there we go, and then I'm just going to use a team site. I'm going to do sp_install again for the username. I'm not going to put a quota because I haven't set up any quotas yet, but you should have a quota. And click OK. And so then now this is going to create, and while this spins, I'll hit pause. Yay, it's done. All right, so we'll click OK. All right, so now we have new web apps, we have site collections, we have content. Almost there, folks. Almost ready to create the user profile service app. The last still step here, we hit the start button again. We're going to type in reg edit. And we're going to click on regedit. Yes to the user access control. All right, and what we need to do is there's a feature in Windows called just loopback checking. So essentially it looks to see if you're referring to the server by a name other than the server's name and trying to access it. And so in the case of where we're using my.shanescows.com to access a site running on this server, SharePoint's like, from locally on the server, SharePoint's like, there's some shenanigans here. Not SharePoint, Windows says there's some shenanigans here, and they're going to block that by default. But we know that's valid, we want it to happen, so we're actually going to enable it. We're going to disable that security feature. So HKey local machine, system, current control set, control, scroll down a little bit, LSA. So in this particular folder, we're going to right click and we'll say new, 32-bit value. We're going to say disable loopback check. All right, and then we're going to open it up and we're going to change the 0 to a 1. And just like that, we've turned off a security feature. Now, if you were doing this for production, I would discourage you from doing it that way, right? Because that just turns off the loopback checking across the board, making that an attack vector on your machine. If you go and look up disable loopback check, there's actually a KB article that will explain to you how to add just the entries that you want to bypass it. So you would add my and portal and say those two guys are allowed to skip over that particular behavior. Okay, and so one more thing that we need to do before we can proceed. I keep, one more thing, right? It's always about one more thing. So we're going to jump over to the SQL Server. And we're going to go over to our friend, the install account. So right here, right? So still underneath security logins, and there's install. We're going to double click on him. And we're going to say user mappings. And so for the PowerShell that we're about to run to work, we need to go ahead and give the install account access to the my content database. So we're going to click on this database. And we're going to scroll down the bottom. And so what we need to do is we need to give the SP data access role. So we'll check that box, we'll say OK. All right, so that takes care of that. So now we can switch back over to the SharePoint server. And now back over here on the SharePoint server, we're going to open PowerShell. We're going to make sure we're on a nice blank screen, so I already am. And so now we got some PowerShell to type in again. Yay! So we're going to do new SP profile service application dash application pool default service app pool. Right? Remember earlier I told you to make sure you wrote down the right name, or if you did a different name, just make sure you put it in there. For the name of the service app, put it in quotes. We'll do user profile service. Close that out. And then now we need to do our databases. So we're going to do dash profile DB name, and we're going to, for that we're going to do user underscore profile underscore DB. And then we'll do the social database. Oh, social DB name. And for that one, we'll do user underscore social DB. See, and I like to append all the names with user. That way, over in Central or in SQL Management Studio on the other side, they'll all four of these databases be grouped together. It just makes it easier to find, easier to troubleshoot, that type of stuff down the road. All right, so then now when you do the profile sync DB, oh, I should have typed in more. Profile sync DB name, and so that's going to be user sync DB. And then finally, we need to do the my site. I just said 4 databases. I meant 3. The my site host location, and so that's going to be the web application we just created, right? HTTP my.shanescows.com. Close the quotes. I also can see that I forgot to hit the space bar, so we'll go over here. There we go. All right, so that should do that. Right, you can hit pause so you can copy that down if you need to, or if you're using the premium features, right, you've always got the ability to just run a script, answer some questions, and go. So hit enter, and I'll hit pause while that processes. Okay, so that completed successfully. So now we're going to type in, we're going to get off that select window. Oh, there we go. All right, we're going to type in, we just need to do a variable, so $cow equals get SP service application dash name, and then whatever we named it above, which was user profile service. And after you do a variable, it's always nice just to type it in to see that it got it. Boom, it pulled that. And so then finally, last one here, new SP profile service application proxy, and then dash service application will be $cow, and default proxy group. Remember to use your tabs, guys, right? That's how I'm typing so magically fast. Dash name, user profile service proxy. Hit bam, wham, and we'll hit pause for a second while that processes. And just like that, that's all done. All right, so we'll get rid of PowerShell for the moment. And so now back over here in Central Admin, actually let's check our SQL Server real quick. So we'll click on SQL, databases, and hit refresh. Look at all those beautiful database names. Oh, mwah, beautiful. All right, so let's go over here. So now we need to make a quick change. And so the change is we need to enable search to access those user profiles. So we're going to click on Manage Service Applications, and we're going to scroll down, and we're going to click to the right of User Profile Server. So don't click on it. Click over here to the right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hit Administrators. We're going to type in SP Content. Remember, that's the account we told everything that search does to use. So add. And we're going to say that account has the ability to retrieve people data for search crawlers. So check the box and click OK. So then now search will be able to index the user profile service. And I believe that brings us, checking my little list here, is now we're going to go into the user profile service. And now we need to configure our syncs. We need to go and pull data from AD. Right, so right now number of user profiles is 0. We need to remedy that. So we're going to say configure synchronization connections. We're going to say create new connection. I was trying to look and see what I named it in the guide. And we're going to do AD connection, right? Call it whatever you want. What is your fully qualified domain name? Well, for me, it's ShanesCows. Yours might .com. Yours might be something different. For account name, we're going to do ShanesCows and then SP profile. Remember the account that we gave all those fancy special permissions to? This is what it's being used for. Put in our password. Put in our password again. Right? We can use a little IE checker. Oh, there it is. Looks good. We're going to scroll down and we hit populate containers and cross our fingers. Yes, it shows them to us. We're going to expand out, and then we're going to select the users OU. So that way we're just going to pull in all of the user accounts, which really don't have any users in our domain other than the SharePoint service accounts, but hey, it'll prove that it works. So we'll click OK. Now this is one of those annoying things about SharePoint. There's no way to get back to where we need to go, so we got to go all the way out. So back to application management, manage service apps, scroll down and click on user profile service. Probably worth setting as a favorite in reality. And so that now that that's configured, we need to start a profile synchronization. So we'll click this link, And here we're going to say start a full synchronization. So click OK. And so right down here at the bottom where it says idle right now, this tells you what's going on. And so if we hit refresh, there you go. Now you can see the synchronizing is starting to take place. It'll take about 30 seconds or a minute. We'll hit pause. I'll just keep hitting refresh while you're gone, and I'll turn it back on when it's done. All right. And of course, that was the one-time pause, wasn't necessary. I hit pause, I hit refresh, it was already done. So this switched back to idle, and you can see the number of user profiles up here is 10. So that's good news. If you ever want to check, your profiles, you can go to Manage User Profiles, and then like Find Profiles with SP. We know we have a bunch of those. Find, and so you can see those all got pulled in. So that's great news. So that means our profiles have all been pulled in. Active Directory, imports like that can be a very difficult part of SharePoint, so it worked. Yay. All right, let's go back to Application Management. And just double checking my guide here. All right, we're going to go into Manage Service Apps. And now we're going to go to the Search Service Application. We're almost done, guys. Video's almost over. Yay! And so what I want to do is I'm going to go to Content Sources, and I'm going to click on Local SharePoint Sites. And what we should see here is that the My Site web app we created and the Portal web app I created were both added automatically. We now need to add the people content source. So we're going to type in SPS3 : my.shanescows.com. And so that's telling SharePoint that's where the people searching needs to happen. So that's where you can get that from. Scroll down, click OK. We're not going to worry about schedules or any of that right now. So we're just going to hit this drop down. We're going to say start a full crawl. Are you sure you want to start a full crawl? I am. And so this is going to take 3 or 4 minutes. So guess what I'm going to do? Hit pause. Okay, so the crawl finished up. Yay. Right, 4 minutes, 11 seconds. So if we go over to the crawl log here, I want to talk about a couple things. So one is, successes. Yay. Warnings are, let's see what the warning is. All right, it didn't crawl the things at my.shanescows.com, the root, because it's not supposed to, because it's just the My Site host site collection. Default behavior, that's good behavior, good. Click back on crawl log. And so then here we're going to see we get an error. And if we click in one more time, we got this error that this item cannot be called because of the specified timeout period. So what this is this is just because the server essentially ran out of resources, right? If we go to Task Manager and we go to Performance, we'll see, we're using 93% of the memory, the CPU. So what I would recommend you do is, if you've ran out of resources, the easiest thing to do is to reboot the SharePoint server and then rerun the crawl and see what your behavior is then. It's really just a resource constraint here on the VMs. So actually, I'll go ahead and see, we'll return ourselves to home as central admin. So you tell you what, I'll go ahead and do a complete reboot and do another crawl just to show that it should be all happy. So I'll hit pause and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I went ahead and rebooted. So now we're going to go back into content sources and we will start another full crawl. And this is just a reminder before we hit pause again, is that, if you're having issues, working your way through the videos at all, sometimes a reboot in the middle doesn't hurt you, right? Because once again, it's just about how many resources you have on these VMs. And so where I really scrounged together on as small a resource set as I could here, if any of my scripts had failed along the way, I might have rebooted, halfway through the process just to kind of free up resources and start over. It's really just a matter of how much horsepower you have. All right, I'm going to hit pause and we'll be back when this full crawl finishes. Okay, so now the crawl finished again. Took a little longer, which is probably a good sign. Go to crawl log, and looks like we had a bunch of successes, some warnings, and some errors. Let's check on our errors. And the first error here. So once again, the item can be crawled because the repository not responding to the specified timeout. That's just a resource issue on a VM, so we can ignore that one safely. But the one I wanted you to see was this one. The URL of the item could not be resolved. If we click on this, you're going to see that it tried to crawl some weird site master and a GUID. Yours will be different numbers, but site master and GUID. And so what I found is that this is actually a bug with SharePoint, I believe. I'm in the midst of working with Microsoft right now, whether it's a bug or working as designed, but either way, you're going to always get this crawl error. And so what this is if you go over to Central Administration, and then Application Management, and then View All Site Collections, you're going to see that on your My Portal application, there is a site, not called slash something, but just Site Master. So this is where that weird URL just came from. And Site Masters are a new feature in SharePoint 2016 that allow for fast site creation. Essentially, it's a template loaded so that it can provision my sites much faster when new users come on board. It's a good feature, it's helpful, it's automatically all been done for us. The problem is the search engine doesn't know how to deal with it, so it's going to error out on that every time. So you can either completely ignore that error, which would be fine, or if errors really bother you, the other option would be go to Application Management, Manage Service Applications, and search service application. And so then here what you do is you create a crawl rule. And so we'll say new crawl rule. And then for path, we'll do HTTPS : site master star. And then we'll say exclude all items in this path. And click OK. And so then now, next time we do a full crawl, search will just avoid that URL altogether, so you'll get rid of the errors. May or may not be worth it. I just thought since that was the current bug that's been driving me crazy for the last week, I thought I would share that with you guys. But the good news is, if you've gotten this far, you have a fully functional SharePoint farm. You got search, you got user profiles, BDC, manage metadata. You can jump in and start playing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I realize it was nice and long, but it took me about 2 hours and 20 minutes in real time. The video is going to turn out to probably be about an hour for you guys. So anyway, enjoy. If you like, remember to subscribe to the channel or leave me comments. You can hit me up at Shane's Cows, or you can contact me directly through www.boldzebras.com. And if you're interested in all, check out the link for the premium package. So that way, instead of typing in all that PowerShell, you get the runnable scripts where you just get prompted, and then you'll also get a download of the PDF, which will be this install guide, which will have step-by-step, right? So here are the screenshots and the bolded steps and that type of thing, so that you can follow along at your own pace instead of kind of trying to follow along with the video. All right, well, thanks and have a great day.